just required to Naira. Let me introduce here in Abuja, Senior Economic Analyst. It's a pleasure to have you join us. He's a regular on Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes.
And still from our Abuja studio, we have already seated Farouk Abdullahi, Financial Analyst. Thank you so much for coming. He's also a regular. He's welcome.
Okay, we are also being joined from via Zoom from Lagos, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Dr. Muda is the MD, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, and also former DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Muda Yusuf, it's a pleasure to see you. I hope this countenance is not about the falling Naira, is it?
Not at all. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, and good morning to all Nigerians.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Okay, let's as well start with you. And just as we were saying yesterday, we started conversation on this issue, and the different guests we brought here gave us their perspectives of what they thought, the issues responsible for the depreciation of the Naira. And, quite a number of factors they ruled out. But we just briefly, before we delve into the context of our conversation now, they mentioned, of course, the reforms. They mentioned hoarding of the currency, depleting external reserves, of course, demand for currency, foreign currency, and, diaspora remittances, unofficial diaspora remittances, and so on and so forth. What are your perspectives, and how much do you think this fact?
Well, first, let me say that reforms undertaken by the present administration with respect to the foreign exchange market was a reform that is inevitable. It is something that we needed to do to avoid a complete collapse of the system. As you know, we had two major reforms. We had the reforms around the foreign exchange, and we had reforms around oil and gas, which is fuel subsidy. On the foreign exchange, what the government has done was a corrective action, to correct the existing distortions and to put the markets on a path of a market-led approach to the allocation of foreign exchange, which is good. But because of the peculiarities of the Nigerian economy, there is a limit to which you can allow the market to go, which is, talking now about free floating of the Naira. There is a need for, regular periodic intervention, and there's a need for proper vigilance and surveillance of the system. Because the kind of variables we have there are not the kind of variables you have in the more advanced economy. So that is why we cannot just leave the market completely alone. There are all manner of variables, all manner of demands that normally you don't experience in other parts of the world. So that is why vigilance on the market is extremely important. The second point is that coming from the dispensation we are coming from, and I'm talking now about the previous dispensation under the Buhari administration. First, we had huge backlog of unmet foreign exchange demand, which on the back of the, liberalization of the exchange rate, those backlog were unleashed on the foreign exchange market. That was a very big one. Secondly, we had a lot of speculative activities driven by some level of uncertainty and driven by the feeling in some quarters that the CBN may not have the capacity to be able to support the Naira. So these speculative activities really fueled demand. And that's to say that the quantum of demand that we saw in the foreign exchange market were not necessarily people who needed the foreign exchange for economic activities. A substantial component of the demand were people corporate organizations and individuals who had lots of money and who just wanted to speculate on the Naira in the expectation that the Naira may, depreciate further. Then there are also the component of money laundering. Whether we like it or not, this economy is still full of all manner of illicit funds arising from corruption. And when people are sitting on so much funds, they don't care whatever the exchange rate is. If they are desperate to store their money or to launder their money in foreign currency. So this also put a whole lot of pressure, particularly on the parallel market. Then we had the liberalization of the fuel sector, which meant that a lot of private sector players can now import petroleum products on their own. And the demand for forex from that side is also very huge because our fuel consumption is huge. And because we are not refining petroleum products domestically, the demand by these private sector operators for forex is also huge. Monthly cannot be less than $500 million. So these are huge pressures that are coming on the foreign exchange market, coupled with the fact that we had a situation of depleting reserves. And the situation was not helped by the revelations that came from the audits of the central bank, audit reports of the Central Bank of Nigeria. That's further fueled speculation that created a lot of uncertainty, which also put additional pressure on the foreign exchange market. So these are the factors that actually had led to the kind of sharp depreciation in the foreign exchange market that we witnessed.
Quite interesting there, Claire. Yes, the way you broke down the issues there, it's very, very okay. And let me bring in Dr. Tochukwu Okafor, senior economic analyst. From the inaugural speech of the president to his national broadcast to Nigerians, we see his concern for how the economy has declined over time, and the cash crunch itself didn't help matters. Now we have policies, fiscal policies, we have a committee in place, and we're talking about harmonizing the Naira, but things are just not going the way that it's planned. Do we need a redirection?
Actually, like Dr. Muda already said, he has already hit all the major pressure points that are actually hitting the Nigerian economy. But I think the problem, like I said in the last time we spoke about this, I told you that the lack of policy impact analysis on part of the authorities is what is our major problem on this whole front. Not necessarily the policies, but policy impact analysis gives you an idea of what the unforeseen contingencies that you might envisage along the journey might be, and then you prefer buffers and solutions. I personally think, this is my opinion, that I think they are putting the cart before the horse. Now I think it's time we put the horse before the cart. Let's look at it from the fundamentals, the foundation. Major source of oil revenue, major source of revenue for the country is oil. Right, 2005 to 2013. Notice there was an FX boost. I think we had surplus at that point. Reason being, we were producing between 2 million to 2.2 billion barrels per day, right?
2.2 billion.
2.2 billion, I think that was it that time. Now you can see at that point that revenue wasn't the problem, and then activities in the export markets were working, right? Now there is a clock there. Right? Between June and now, we have had a deficit, a decline in both oil prices and oil production. Oil prices, I think US West Intermediate has dropped from 89 to 86. No, 82. While Brent is now 86. Oil production has now dropped from 1.48 to 1.29. Out of that 1.29, you need to understand that both blended and unblended condensate, remove that, we are having 1.08. Now, blended and unblended is accruing for just a little above 38,000 and 107. We're already inching towards the thousands. If our production is low, then you already know there's a problem. Now, why did this happen? This is where the unforeseen contingency I said comes in. We heard that last month, I think 13th of July, that Focado temporarily shut down as a result of sheen that was found in the mooring section, right? Now, that alone reduced productivity amongst the 7 oil refinery terminals from 7 million barrels per day to 3.45. That is more than 58%. Now, when you have this drop, guaranteed there's going to be pressure on revenues that are coming. When you have pressures on the revenue, naturally there will be pressures on the reserve. When there's pressure on the reserve, we already know, like Dr. Muda said, that the pressure in the demand for this foreign exchange by both the oil and as a result of inflation, and then we have 48 blacklisted items that are still running, and then you're sending these people still to the black market. Then we are having 4 subsidy removal, so there's inflation. So everybody's like, where is that extra money going to come? So when we don't have any supply, you know what? I will hedge against inflation using this dollar. So instead of wasting my time doing export and whatnot, let me just hold the dollar and speculate till it hits 1.5. Then I put it back. Also happens with our FPIs. The FPIs are not willing. Like I told you the last time, I told you they will watch for 3 months.
Yes,
and 3 months will tell us the whole story. We're already there. We're just 2 months in, right? They are going to watch, and that's hot money. They watch, speculate, see that it hits the highest, that above what they even anticipated, pull out. At this point, when you're now having this amount leaving the system versus the amount that is supposed to come in now reducing because of the unforeseen contingencies, everywhere is going to start feeling everybody's going to start feeling the heat. So as long as those fundamentals are not there, if I go into the monetary aspect, it becomes useless. Because talking about the reserves, talking about production, talking about the CBN making policies, the concept is the major source of revenue, which is FX from oil prices, oil revenue, is not coming in. Now, we've not even talked about the bunkery and all the vandalizations. We've not gone there. And then with those ones, you know that there's a high migration from onshore fields to offshore fields already. So when you're having this combination moving simultaneously with inflation, inflation now, you know, I told you 24. You remember when we were saying all this?
You predicted it.
I told you 24 guaranteed, and that's not even the real figure, because what we are doing now is interregional average. If you look at intra-regional actual figures, you see that we're actually, as Abuja alone, we're actually clocking 28 to 29%. Just Abuja alone. What you're seeing is the average of all the baskets of the state. So if you're now looking at intra-regional regional,
what did you say, 28 point what?
28 points something percent, but above 28, above 29. Now, if you now look at the places where this oil are being rigged, you now be seeing that the percentages there could be around 27, 20. So when you're having this moving along, why wouldn't there be bunkering?
Dr. Tochukwu.
Let me just stop here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for observing the full stop. And I mean, it would appear that the economic watchers are not probably, you know, seeing from the perspectives that you analysts are seeing.
He actually predicted. We had a program with him here on Good Morning Nigeria, and he predicted 24 points. Yes,
you know, and not looking at it. But again, the acting CBN governor, you know, in his speech, ruled out economic factors as a possible cause, you know, for the destabilization of the Naira. You know, he did say, put the blame on squarely on speculation, you know, currency speculators and all that. We are trying to establish contact with Professor Michael Badon, who joined us yesterday. And when we do, we will just bring him up to give us his, you know, yesterday he started off with what he thought was were reforms. So when we get connected with him, he will share those issues with us. But Farouk Abdullahi is a financial analyst. He's here with us. Like I said, the CBN governor has a different opinion of what is affecting the stabilization of the Naira. Are you also sharing the broader perspectives expressed by our guests?
Absolutely. What the CBN governor expressed is actually...
Acting governor.
Oh, what the CBN acting governor expressed is actually part of the reasons why we are seeing these fluctuations, you know, or rather instability in the exchange rate, especially in the parallel market. If you look at the I&E window, it has been stable over time.
That's what he said.
So it simply means that people are hoarding this money, you know, utilizing, exploiting the margin, you know, which often it is done by arbitrageurs. So they try to exploit the market, take advantage of the economy, you know, get this, hoard the dollar, speculate on it, buy it when it is low and sell it when it is high. So this really, it's part of the problem.
Yeah, they hoarding the dollars.
They buy it, they save it, they stash it, you know. So once
at home or in the...
It can be at home or in the or even in the banks, you know, because another aspect also that boosts our currency, or where we primarily get most of our inflow, is from the diaspora remittances. And there hasn't been too much, or let's say tight monitoring on these diaspora remittances, and it gives a large chunk of currency inflow in the country. So without getting to monitor and track the movement of these funds, and without it going through the radar, or the channel of the banking institutions, or let's say the regulation of the banking institution, it will be difficult for the central bank and other monitoring authorities to actually incorporate the diaspora remittance into consideration when determining the exchange rates. So definitely this leads to serious problem in the currency. And also, I always like to reference the root cause of the problem. Why we are having this currency issues and instability. Primarily, it's because of the declining supply of the forex. And this declining supply in the forex is indicated by the continuous depletion of our foreign reserve. And if you look at also our net forex inflow, net forex inflow represents the total inflow of forex into the economy and the total outflow of forex from the economy. The inflow is represented by the oil revenue that my colleagues have just rightly mentioned. It is represented by also diaspora remittances that we are talking of.
Yes, it has reached 20 billion.
It is, pardon?
Diaspora remittance.
It's way over
20 billion.
Yeah, 20 billion, But now, even the diaspora remittances is on the decline. People don't have confidence in the Nigerian market. So they try to wait and see and observe, the currency trend in the country. So this often deters them from sending money into the country. And another thing is foreign investment. Foreign investment, we have from between, I think, 2015 to 2022, we have seen a decline in foreign investment by over 75 or 76%. I think 77% to be precise. It declined to only about 5-point-something billion, from a whopping figure that is close to 100 billion, some years back. So if you look at all these issues, it aggregates to the overall lapses, in the inflow of this forex into the country.
Okay. Thank you so much there, Farouk Abdullahi. Let's bring in Professor Mark Obada. He's Professor of Economics and Chairman, Goldmark Education Academy, Benin City, and Non-Executive Director and Member, Monetary Policy Committee, Central Bank of Nigeria. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I'm sure you've been listening to the conversation here in the studio, and we'll be looking at policies and how to stabilize the Naira, and our guests have raised a lot of pertinent issues. And we know that the CBN announced plans to take critical decisions to reverse the slide of the Naira in the next few days. Will it in any way result in significant losses to these speculators who continue to play around the market and hoard money, and then when the price goes up, they inject it back into the system? Let's have your opinion there. Well, yes, Dr. Tochukwu, you can take up that question.
Okay. For starters, I personally think that it's only going to come to fruition if the inflationary trends in the country actually dissipate, right? We are currently in a situation where we have excess liquidity outside the CBN, right? And with the consistent hike in rates, right, we're on 18.75 right now. The direct implication of that is, as long as there's excess money outside, the system will never have control over the public. And as long as that inflationary pressure keeps mounting, you keep putting panic in the minds of many Nigerians, because they know that there is money outside and there is no particular way of actually getting back this money, right, without demonetizing, which is what a lot of Nigerians are against, right, demonetization. And I particularly think that the CBN, this is just an advice or a recommendation, that the CBN, in a move to demonetize, can actually start investing in fintechs like the OP spread. There has to be a spread of financial institutions, because I think what happened when we were trying to do the Naira redesign was that the pressure on the banks with the population versus the bandwidth was not commensurate. They were not commensurate, right? Now make a spread where at least online transactions can go through. What you would have at that point is financial inclusion in the first place, right? Those places that are not financially included will first come into play. Then at that point, you now begin to demonetize temporarily, even if it's at a 6-month period. Demonetize for a 6-month period. After that 6-month period, you discover that inflation starts coming down. Then you start controlling the supply again, because I think part of the reason why the supply wasn't controlled wasn't because they didn't do their due diligence, but it was because the conditions that came after the pandemic were beyond what they expected. Yes. We had kidnappings that happened for 7 straight months. For every kidnapping, right, there were a minimum of 100 to 50 students. Out of those 100 to 50 students, some are bringing 100 million, 50 million, 20 million. Multiply that across the schools and see how much left the system within that singular period in 2021, and see how much left the banks. And now due diligence, these are people's money to save their loved ones. You can't stop them. Pull out those funds for 6 months and see what is left in their vault. So at that point where you have that excess liquidity outside unbanked again versus the minimum amount that you're using to run monetary policy, what are you monetary policy? Because no matter how you try to increase those rates, these people have the money. There is no investor even coming in the first place because of the insecurity. And then again, no matter how much you increase that interest rate, because people are not coming to take the money, it's insignificant. So I have the money, so what are you increasing the interest? What are you attracting me with? What do you have to offer me that I'm coming to take? So even if you do it, you're just putting pressures on the banks' profitability, and then the banks now carry that aggression, because even that 18.5 is not what the banks are going to give the public. We're going to be seeing it at roughly 31 to 32% from the banks. Nobody is going to. So you're first pushing out investors, both domestic and foreign. You're now pushing out both the banks' profitability, putting aggression on them to actually deviate those funds or those interests to other sectors, and now start pushing it on the citizens at the end of the day. So as a result of this pressure, the citizens are now forced to say, you know what, let me save myself. Let me get dollar, any amount of dollar I can get. Order and I die. I'll save this dollar until it hits 1.5, and then I cash out, and then in quote, japa. So you keep seeing people saying these things, and the trend is now becoming more that people are saving to japa, not to invest. Now, when you have that kind of thing happening over time, before you know it, no matter the monetary policy or the policy you're putting in place, people are no more listening because they have their own policy they are running personally.
Internal policy. Dr. Tochukwu, thank you. Again, hopefully Professor Mike Obadan connection should be clear now. I don't think so. We still can't make out his face. Professor Mike Obadan, good morning, and I hope we hear you clearly this morning. Yesterday, you joined us again from Benin City. You made your points. You gave us some of the reasons why the Naira, has been depreciating. And you were also going to make some inputs on the reforms. And there were quite a number of reforms, undertaken by the past administration and even this administration. For instance, we had the PIA, we had the Naira redesign, we had the convergence of currency convergence at the markets. That's the unification of the market rates, and so on and so forth. Some people have described these policies as fatigued. So I'm wondering what you are wondering. The acting governor of the central bank will do, as he says in the coming intervention.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm very pleased to be with you. I just hope internet connection will be stable. Like I explained yesterday, is in a state of economic crisis, and the foreign exchange market is also in a state of crisis, and very drastic actions are required, to address the situation. I like the position taken by Dr. Muda Yusuf, with the implication that the market, there would need to be some kind of intervention because of the numerous factors, characterizing the peculiar circumstances of the foreign exchange market and the economy. Now, the economy is in crisis. The country apparently is living beyond its means. And in the foreign exchange market, we have excess demand. Like I said, it's important. If we have to redeem the Naira, it's important for Nigerians to make some sacrifices at this point in time in the interest of the economy and the country. So some of the measures I would suggest now will require some level of degree of patriotism, sacrifice. Otherwise, we'll be where we are. Like I said yesterday, I think the only point I was able to make before the audio in the studio cut me off was that the central bank will need to intensify interventions now in the foreign exchange market to try to moderate the fluctuations and the depreciation of the Naira. And I said the bank should try to mobilize foreign exchange resources from whatever source it can get such resources, in the hope that other complementary measures from the fiscal authority and even the monetary authorities would be taken to boost foreign exchange earnings. Now, the major reform I think we need, that needs to be undertaken going further is the reform of the foreign currency domiciliary account. As I just mentioned briefly yesterday, there is a lot of foreign currency in the domiciliary account. As of July, it's about 23.3 billion US dollars. And it is lying more or less idle there in the sense that it is not available to support interventions in the foreign exchange market to stabilize the exchange rate. And in that light, you find that there is crisis, but there is foreign exchange. And the foreign exchange in the domiciliary account is owned by individuals, companies, institutions, and other economic agents. And what I then have in mind by way of reforming the foreign currency domiciliary account are two. Number one, as of today, economic agents, it appears that economic agents, individuals, and all that are able to buy foreign exchange either from the official market or from the black parallel market and lodge into the foreign currency domiciliary account. That is against the initial objectives of the foreign currency.
Okay, we seem to have lost Professor Mark Obada. Tochukwu, I saw you nodding your head. Do you agree with what he's saying?
I agree. Reason is, I told you now that as a result of speculation and fears, right, people are hoarding. And like you asked him the first time, where are they holding this thing? It's actually in domiciliary account. So the best way to do it is bring about the cycle. What you hoard, we use it to save, and then it keeps going, and over time people stop hoarding, except they hoard at home. Do you understand? So where Professor Obadan, I'm just speaking from what I assume he was going to say, is that since the reserves are in a crisis where interventions can't come from there, because we are $34 billion right now, right? And it has been dropping, I think annually, on year to year, like I was explaining earlier, it drops by $440 million every year. The best now, instead of doing that, is go to the domiciliary where these companies keep, now not calling out any company that keeps or speculates, but where they keep their this thing, and use it to as an intervention this thing temporarily until like the oil sector gets its footing back, at least if production ramps up, and then we put laws to guide against all the irregularities in the oil sector. Once we bounce back, we can now peg back the domiciliary account. And so it's a crisis intervention scheme, not necessarily a long-term or something that a policy that will
sustainable.
It's not sustainable, but it's something that you can use in a crisis.
Sure. Okay. Dr. Muda is still with us via Zoom, from Lagos. Dr. Muda, I would also like you to wade in here. Professor Mike Obadan had given us, the pathway now. And I know that one sector that the depreciation of the Naira is hitting hard is the manufacturing sector. From your perspective, he talked about, one, the need to mobilize, Forex. And the one area he has recommended is by reforming the, functions and use of the domiciliary accounts. What are your perspectives? Now, if you were to advise the acting governor of the central bank, what kind of interventions, what nature of interventions would you, recommend?
Well, I hope you are also aware of the news that broke yesterday about the deal that was struck between the NNPC and the Afrexim Bank with respect to $3 billion facility, which is meant to support the reserves and, ultimately support the Naira through the intervention by the CBN. For me, I think that is a very good development, because what we are faced with, or what we have been facing in the foreign exchange market, is essentially a confidence crisis. I know when confidence collapses, there's always a rush to buy things. And weaknesses in confidence also fuels speculative activities. So this facility that is coming through the NNPC, to the central bank, will help at least to restore some level of confidence. And we are beginning to see the impact of that even between yesterday and today. Because if the CBN is in a position to consistently intervene in the market, just as I said earlier, there's nowhere in the world where you leave your currency entirely to market forces. There has to be intervention by way of injection of foreign exchange by the central bank into the system. And there has to also need to be an intervention by way of monitoring of the flow of funds of those who are demanding the Forex. What exactly are they doing with it? What is the purpose? Where is their money coming from? So there has to be a multi-dimensional approach to this intervention. So the intervention is going to help a great deal, to moderate the volatility in the market. And once we're able to moderate the volatility and restore some level of confidence, then we are likely to see much better inflows in the foreign exchange, either through the foreign direct investments or through portfolio investments, or even through remittances, the diaspora remittances and other remittances either from oil companies, from international organizations, or from the embassies. That level of confidence is needed. And I think we are on the path, to ensuring that level of confidence. And just as my colleague in the studio said, there's a whole lot that is happening about restoring our oil output. Because if there's any low-hanging fruit at the moment, it's for us to fix the problem with our oil production. Oil price is now getting close to $85, dollars per barrel, and many of the oil-producing countries are making a whole lot of money and boosting their reserves as a result of this high oil price. So we should also position ourselves to take advantage of it. We already have the Petroleum Industry Act to support investment, but we need to fix the problem of insecurity and the problem of transparency in oil production transactions and oil export transactions. So I think that is ongoing, and I'm sure that will also help. Then on the demand side, we also need to reduce pressure by, promoting and doing a lot more with respect to import substitution. We are importing so many things that we do need to import. And those things are putting pressure, on the foreign exchange markets. For instance, we must be spending anywhere between $500 to $800 million for the importation of petroleum products. That's a huge pressure. So if we're able to fast track all these efforts about local refining of petroleum products, either through the government-owned refineries or through the Dangote refineries, that will ease the pressure of demand on foreign exchange. Then, of course, this may be medium to long term. Our manufacturing sector also needs to begin to work a lot more, of course, with the support of government, on what you call backward integration. Because the pressure of importation of raw materials by manufacturing is also huge. And this is happening because we have not made much progress as far as backward integration is concerned. So we need to do a lot more, at least by supporting the manufacturing sector to be able to source quite a number of their raw materials domestically. So that will also help to ease the pressure on the foreign exchange market. And there are quite a number of things that will also expend our foreign exchange on that we normally should not be spending our foreign exchange on. So we need some fiscal policy measures to also support the restriction of such frivolous imports into the economy. So the fiscal side of the of policy also has a role to play here. So for me, this is the way to go. Of course, the depreciation has had a very significant impact on the economy and on prices generally. I mean, you can see the way prices have been galloping. You can see what the inflation data is telling us, because there is a very strong correlation between exchange rate depreciation and the inflationary pressures in the economy because of the high level of import dependence, of the economy. So if we're able to do all of that, we see some moderation in the exchange rate, and through that, the level of inflation will also drop.
Dr. Muda, thank you very, very much for your response. Jume, I know you have
yes. He raised a lot of issues, and some political experts are saying that it is the intervention is strategic for a purpose. One is to get the Naira on a kind of stability, and the other is to allow it flow. What do you say, Farouk?
Well, the intervention is, I would say, it's inevitably required.
Okay.
If we want to stabilize the currency in the short term, but we know it is not sustainable in the long run. But this intervention plus other interventions are equally important, because I made mention of the total inflow of forex that we are having. It plays an integral role. So once the outflow outstrips the inflow, there lies a problem. It troubles...
Sorry, Farouk, I have to just pause you for a while. Please keep your thoughts on hold. When we come back to you, you continue. We just want to join our correspondent at the High Court here in Abuja. That's the FCT High Court here in Abuja. Dele Atumbi is our judiciary correspondent, and he's standing by where the suspended CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele is to be arraigned today. Dele Atumbi, thank you for joining us live. Just give us what more can we learn from you, apart from the fact that today is the arraignment day for the suspended CBN governor?
Thank you, Claire. The truth of the matter is that the suspended CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, will be arraigned in this court, which is Court 27 of the High Court of the FCT. And he will be standing trial on 22 counts charge. And the 22 count charge has to do with alleged procurement fraud running up to 6.9 billion naira. It is not only Emefiele that is the defendant in this matter. It is Emefiele and two others. So they are now 3 persons to be tried on this matter. And they will be answering questions on 6.9 billion naira alleged fraud. What are the things that we expect that will happen today in the court? 1, arraignment of Emefiele and 2 others. The second one has to do with the fact that the defendant, who are Emefiele, Wonsada to Ayaro and Afem, would equally take their plea. And the other thing that can happen today will now be the bail application of Emefiele. And we must equally say this, that bail is at the discretion of the court at every point in time. The court may grant it, the court may not grant it. But what I can tell you now is that all is set for the arraignment of Emefiele at the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja.
We heard that some charges have been added to make it 22, and we also heard that the gun charges has been dropped. How true is that?
I've seen on the court list, and I've seen even the charge. They are still 20 count charge. Maybe the one you are referring to has to do with the one in Lagos, pending before the Federal High Court in Lagos. 2 charges had been dropped, and we expect that the judge will definitely give ruling on the matter today. The federal government had applied to withdraw those charges, which has to do with firearm, illegal possession of firearm, and that one is in the Federal High Court in Lagos. But we expect a ruling today from the Federal High Court in Lagos concerning the application of the federal government to withdraw the matter before that court.
Before we let you go, I was also wondering if the charges you read out were bailable, but you just told us that that's at the discretion of the judge. But how is the suspended CBN governor likely to plead?
Well, you can't predict the plea of a defendant. We are not expected to speak for him since he had not taken his plea. We cannot, he has 2 options. The first option is for him to plead guilty, and the second option is for him to plead not guilty.
All right, Dele Atumbi, thank you for the updates that...
You're still talking.
Okay, Dele Atumbi, thank you for the update that you have given us. We hope to get more details from you, of course, as the arraignment goes on. Thank you, Dele Atumbi. All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Don't forget, Farouk was giving us his response on the question asked by Jume, but he will continue when we come back from this short break.
Fellow Nigerians, I made a solemn pledge to work for you, how to improve your welfare and living condition. It's of paramount importance to me, and it is the only thing that keeps me up day and night.
Bye, Mom.
This weather? Why did you let him go? He might fall ill.
And if he doesn't go out for practice, how will he win more trophies? To protect our family from illness-causing germs during the rainy season, use Dettol soap every day.
Dettol with Germ Defense gives you protection. Rainy season brings a lot of germs, and Dettol soap's Germ Defense protects you from up to 100 illness-causing germs. Dettol soap is endorsed by the Nigerian Medical Association. Be Dettol Show.
Humble beginnings to the extraordinary. We've witnessed incredible bonds, the rise of legends in the most challenging of times, and the most unforgettable moments that kept us at the edge of our seat. Everything up till now was just the beginning. Legends go head-to-head as timelines have collapsed for the ultimate showdown. Welcome to Big Brother Niger All-Stars.
Proudly sponsored by Money Point, powering dreams. In association with HFM, online trading at its finest.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
Nigeria means unity. Nigeria means freedom to me.
Nigeria means greatness to me.
To Nigeria is indivisible. There is nothing you can do. We all have to savage it together and learn to love each other. We are indivisible. As a mother and a leader, I will always preach for peace and unity in this country, because that is the only thing that will give us progress.
Though tribes and tongues may differ, in brotherhood we stand. And it is the woman that does that.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we've been discussing with our guest in the studio on stabilizing the Naira Part 2. And my guest Farouk was answering a question before we decided to join Dele Atunbi at the Federal High Court in Abuja for the trial of the former CBN governor. It's all related to this conversation we're having. You know, we talk about the strategic, policy, and how if the Naira is boosted, every other thing will fall into place. You were answering that question.
Yes, absolutely. You see, the health of our currency, I would say, is strongly correlated with to our economic strength as a nation. If you look at the problem we have around the surge in the oil prices, it is directly linked to the poor exchange rates that we are having, the devaluation in the currency, and also the depreciation in the currency in the market, in the black market. So ultimately, if this problem is solved, it will go a long way in solving most of our economic problems. But we can't just solve this problem by focusing on one policy aspect. You know, we need to we have to complement it with other policies to support it, to strengthen it. We understand, we all agree that this crisis around the currency depreciation and devaluation is rooted down to the insufficient currency, in the economy. So unless and until we solve this problem, we can't get out of the problem. Whatever policy we bring out, we develop, we coin out, it can't work without having a long-term plan around it. So definitely I'm happy with the development we had yesterday around the loan that was taken by the NNPC. So this will go a long way in giving us relief in the short term. And you see, information plays a great role, in the currency market, just as it is in the financial market.
Effective and strategic communication.
Absolutely. On the announcement of the development by the CBN governor, by the NNPC, and also by the CBN governor, which he mentioned that he's going to take deliberate steps, to address the currency issues, and those that are hoarding these notes would be at the receiving end. It sent a signal, it sent a message. So this strongly deters them to continue hoarding the money. It compels them now to start taking back back the currencies into the economy. So this is really a good development. Information can do some round tripping, but it is not
round tripping in forex, actually. That is one of the biggest problem of this.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Muda Yusuf is again, I know, listening attentively, and he talked about quite a number of things that can be done in the area of fiscal policy as well as monetary policy. Still on a bit of monetary policy before we look at the fiscal policies that we could, bring up. Yesterday, Professor Uche Uwaleke, warned against more borrowings, external borrowings. I don't know what you think about that. Indeed, he did suggest that we could, if you look at the reality of what is in the National External Reserve, that what the CBN could do in the immediate is to, take some of that and inject back into the system. I don't know what you think about that. And then I'd like you to give us, again, ideas about the probable fiscal policy measures you think we can, bring up now. We've been talking about petroleum sector, PIA, revenue from oil, revenue from crude, and all that. What about our diversification into non-oil sectors? This morning, Jumene and I were talking about the issue about 10 billion naira spent on just movies. That is a sector that we could also, look at and develop fiscal policies that can help improve that sector.
Yes, well, one of the essence of having reserves is to be able to support the currency. And the collapse of confidence that we saw in the foreign exchange market, which has been creating a lot of anxiety among economic players, was as a result of the declining capacity of the central bank to support the currency. So it is not out of place to draw down the reserves to support the currency, because that is one of the major.
Okay, we seem to have lost Dr. Muda Yusuf there, but I believe he will come back before the conversation ends. And we're looking about, Claire is talking about, okay, it's back. You can continue, yes.
When there is a decline, yes, when there is a decline in reserves, it creates a lot of challenges, which is what we saw. Now that there are prospects that the capacity to intervene is improving, then we will see a restoration of confidence. So it is not out of place. If you can get some short-term facility, that is why in some countries, they even approach the IMF. They go to Eurobond market and all of that to boost reserves. But luckily, we have a company that is owned by government, which has very strong fundamentals, which has the credibility to raise facility, that is the NNPC, is a limited liability company, although owned by governments. So if you have that kind of strong company that can help to ease the liquidity, short-term liquidity problems, I think that is a good development. So it's not out of place if you have that kind of facility, because what is coming from the NNPC is something that is similar to the tax credits that the government have been using to fund infrastructure. So it's quite okay. Now, about the fiscal policy. Fiscal policies need to complement monetary policy. Because if you are talking about productivity in the economy, if you are talking about competitiveness in the economy, if you are talking about economic diversification, about reduction in importation, the fiscal policy is very, very critical to support those who are producing in the economy. Because production today in the Nigerian economy is a nightmare because of the numerous challenges that those who are producing are facing, ranging from what you are discussing now, the macroeconomic instability, to the issue of weak purchasing power, to the structural issues of power, of logistics, of the ports. All of these things are making it very, very difficult for those who are producing to produce and produce competitively. So if you can design our fiscal policy to support domestic production, to be more competitive, this dependence on imports will reduce. And we can do that by using the instruments of fiscal policy, namely the instruments of tariff. We can identify some critical sectors of the economy that are strategic to production and give them concessions in import duty. Give them concession in their tariffs. Because some of them, the amount of duty they pay to import raw materials is humongous. In addition to all sorts of port charges, regulatory charges, and all of those things. If the pressure is too much on those who are producing, they will not be able to produce competitively. And you need that competitive production to be able to create jobs, in addition to what I talked about import substitution. So there has to be also intervention in the area of tax. Tax should not be focusing only on generating revenue. It should also be focusing on incentivizing those who are producing. Tax concessions, tax breaks, tax incentives, those things are also very critical. And the current Committee on Fiscal and Tax Reform should also take that on board. It is part of their core mandates. The mandate of that committee, there's a mandate there that's about facilitating growth of the economy. So the focus of taxation should also be such that we can use tax to incentivize our activities in the economy, because the cost of production is extremely high. So these are some of the fiscal policy measures I think we can put in place to support, monetary policy to ensure that you have an economy that is better diversified and an economy that is more inward looking.
Muda, thank you. Just the last one. I read somewhere yesterday a very interesting, statement someone made. He said the CBN cannot stabilize, the Naira, just, by looking at policies and all that, but by putting some money into indigenous, companies like Innocent. I'm just quoting Innocent. Like, all the indigenous companies like Erisco, that is into tomato and paste productions and things like that. I know there were some items, listed or blacklisted for incentives. What do you think, again, apart from the tariffs you mentioned, how can local indigenous companies be empowered using physical policies, to enable them again, up our productive capacity?
Well, first of all, it is good to give money, but it is more important to create the environment for that money to be optimally utilized. If you take the money and you are grappling with exchange rates problems, you can't even import your machineries. You are grappling with logistics because the infrastructure is bad. You are grappling with issue of power because the power situation is bad. How are you going to pay back the money? There are many loans that have gone bad because the environment itself is very difficult. So fundamentally, there is no economy in the world that makes progress, that diversifies, that industrializes without proper infrastructure in place, put in place by government. Government has a critical role to provide that infrastructure. There's a limit to what the private sector can do as far as infrastructure provision is concerned. That is one. Secondly, I must acknowledge that the CBN, even under the previous dispensation, has done a great deal in terms of development finance. And that is one area of also intervention. Because if you ask the manufacturers or those who are in the agri sector to be competing for credit with those who are importing products from China and just buying and selling, there's no way they can compete. So you need that kind of concessionary credit for the growth sectors, for this kind of industrialists that you mentioned. They need that kind of facility, to be able to produce competitively. And of course, we have been talking about the issue of patronage of what is produced locally. Government in its procurement policy has to prioritize that. The policy is there, but sitting down and gathering dust. The implementation has been weak. If there are things we are producing locally, because government is also a major buyer of some of these things, that policy has to be, they need to step up the implementation of that policy. So where things are produced locally, government should prioritize patronage of what is produced locally. So if we patronize them, they'll be able to produce more, they will have economies of scale, and they become more competitive. So these are some of the things that we need to put in place. But
be able to address some of the issues you raised. Dr. Muda Yusuf, MD, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises and former DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for your contribution to the conversation. As always, we appreciate you.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Okay, let's come back to the studio, Dr. Tochukwu Okafor. I like it when they are talking. It's like your brain is going 3,000 kilometers per hour. You're just trying to absorb the information. Well, he has raised some issues there, and after from 2015 to now, we've witnessed recession, COVID-19, crash of the economy, world economy, and all that. Well, Nigeria is a resilient country. We've been able to stabilize with all these problems we have. We are much better than some other countries around the world, and the manufacturing sector, like Claire mentioned, is suffering. There's a huge burden on it. How can we take, like Dr. Muda said, the nightmare out of the manufacturing sector and allow it to prosper more?
So, we always assume when we hear black market, we just talk of forex.
Yes.
Do you know there's manufacturing sector black market? And I think that's where I had to nod when he talked about tax concessions and tax exemptions for certain local productions, because not that I'm trying to call out, there are people in Abuja currently, I won't call them out, they convert Camry 2010 to Lexus ES350 2014 in this Abuja, and nobody knows about them. Reason is they're in the dark because they're scared of what would happen to them. Guess what? This Camry I'm talking about, they get the accidented one, so 2 million, 3 million, and create a car that is over 25, 30 million and sell and make the profit and keep. Now, if you give these people the tax exemptions, which is at the fiscal, this is all about fiscal and monetary harmonization, right? Give them these concessions, you begin to see a lot of expats coming out. They aren't coming out because they are afraid, not just because of the regulatory stipends, but also the tax implications of these things. Give these people the chance. You will see production ramp up in less than 2 quarters in this country because it's already happening.
Yes.
People buy these cars, and I'm talking about even government officials going there to transform some of their cars, and I've seen it. Now, this is one side of it. The other side he said that was really interesting was with regards the oil import substitution with regards to the oil sector, right? I don't want to waste time on that. But the truth is, we have been asking questions around why did Dangote delay? Why did he push it to end of, I think, 2024, beginning 2025? The concept is he's an investor, first off. He's a businessman, so he's not going to invest in negative territory. We need to understand that. So the concept is the economy has to be attractive first before you bring in any form of investment.
Okay.
So let me just summarize it now.
Yes.
So the concept is, first, the CBN should try and be transparent to bring about trade competitiveness and also fighting inflation. And then the fiscal authorities should work hand in hand with the monetary authorities to make sure the right people that are actually doing in the black market, which is not the black market we think, actually start coming out and start producing.
Dr. Tochukwu, thank you. Just to find out more from Farouk, and I'm just wondering if going by all that is happening, around the CBN at the moment, with the arraignment of the former, CBN boss and all the fraud issues and all that, again, how does that impact on the confidence in the Apex Monetary Bank? And again, as we speak, there is no substantive governor of the central bank.
Well, thank you for this question. Well, I would want to respond to you by commenting on what Dr. Muda said.
In just 2 minutes.
Okay, in respect to the improvement or the investment in developmental finance by the former CBN governor. But, well, I differ with him on that because, you see, when you are injecting money into the economy, you have to do that with care and caution. And there hasn't been a time that Nigeria have injected more money, outrageous amount of money into the economy than during the erstwhile CBN governor. Because monetary expansion is good, but if it is done excessively, it leads to hyperinflation. That is where we are here today. When that happens, it gulps up our value, our exchange rate value. So it's part of the problems that accumulated and piled up to this level. So I think confidence is instilled with this change that we are having, because the reaction on the current issues by this by the acting CBN governor, we have seen a swift change, in the dynamics of the currency, and we expect to see more. The intervention also of this NNPC also is adding up. So these are the kind of policy interventions that we expect within the short period of time. And in the long term, we need more than that. We need to, in periods of surplus, we need to diversify by investing in foreign assets. You can look at the case of China, where they have over $3 trillion investment in China.
Farouk, we have to cut the time. We've run out of time, actually.
Yes, Farouk Abdullahi, financial analyst. Thank you very much for coming to share your perspectives with us.
My pleasure.
And let me also appreciate Dr. Tochukwu Okafo, who's a senior economic analyst. I'd like to appreciate you once again. And I share in both of all your optimism, and hopefully all the points that we have raised here, will be put into consideration. Earlier on, we had Professor Mike Obad. Unfortunately, he had to leave because of a connection glitch. So, that does it for Good Morning.
That does it for today. Thanks so much for joining. Join us tomorrow for another insightful edition of the program. This topic is a developing topic, and I'm sure we'll come back to it at some other time. I am Jumai Yusuf.
And just to say that the English, that's the Lionesses of England, will be meeting Spain. They beat the Australians by 3-1 in the fabulous match yesterday. That's an update on the Female World Cup going on. From me and the rest of the GMN team, we wish you a pleasant day. I am Claire Adilabu Abdulrazak. Bye-bye.